listening to CaveRadioBroadcasting.com. The words and opinions you are about to hear are of the hosts and do not reflect the management of CaveRadioBroadcasting.com.
Good afternoon and welcome to Down the Rabbit Hole. Today is Thursday, July 13th, year of our Lord 2017, and you are listening to a Gen Pop Media production. Hooper got caught by a train, so he's training it.
Yeah,
I'm thinking they probably let a boat go through the bridge too, so that'll add a few minutes.
at least 20, unless that's
no,
the door didn't just open.
No, that wasn't the door. So me, Dave, and Tony going to start it with our buddy Roger.
It's good to be back, man.
Yeah, so welcome to being this side of the Pacific Ocean.
Yeah, it's good to be back.
Trip was eventful.
Very eventful.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was really good. I guess we could give a update on the foundation.
I like that. I happen to like that foundation.
Yeah, the DCD Foundation.
That's the DCDfoundation.org.
That's correct. Check it out and please donate. Even $1 is good.
Yeah, keep an eye out for updates as well. I hear those are coming.
Those are coming as soon as all of us busy individuals that have to work for a living can get around to it. But it was good, man. You know, our original roadblock was, if you look at the website now, it talks about, you know, covering fees for kids that aren't able to attend school. I went and talked with my good friend Dizon, who has become even a better friend. He gave me an update on the situation over there, and apparently that problem has been corrected. And you no longer need to come up with fees out of your own pocket to attend public school.
How did they get that worked out? Who corrected that problem?
Well, I think that God corrected that problem, but...
okay, who did God use as his
the government. I mean,
the government, the local, federal...
Well, I mean, I don't know how it works. I stay out of politics with the nonprofit over there, but the money is funded, the Department of Education is funded somehow from the government, so it comes from tax money. So instead of politicians taking it, apparently, they decided $12 per kid is a good investment for the future. So
I like it.
Apparently that problem, that was a very, very huge problem for reasons we won't go into. It takes a lot of time to explain it, but to try to coordinate and administrate that was nearly impossible. And apparently all that required to get fixed was prayer. So thank God for that one.
Amen.
So now we can focus on specific things, books, equipment, things for the schools, because they don't have anything. Ended up meeting with an assistant principal of a school there, elementary school, and visited a class, 6th grade class.
Nice.
And it was pretty hard to be a tough guy during that experience. It was crazy.
I'm sure you did your best.
It was really, really tough, man. You talk about tear-jerking. It was pretty incredible. They made a big banner with our names on it and decorated the blackboard, and every kid made us a card.
Nice.
Excuse me. It was pretty cool, man.
But they treat your kids like rock stars.
They did. Selfies were abundant, and I think we had a 40-minute selfie excursion,
nice.
And with myself as well. So it was pretty cool, man. I actually have access now to some of Dizon's resources, office, staff, stuff like this. So
he's a councilman.
Now
right?
he's a counselor, so I don't know the exact...
Yeah, I don't understand exactly how their barangay
role that works, but he was barangay captain, which is basically like county commissioner, right?
Yeah, right.
And plus some. I mean, he's a prominent businessman in the area. He does a lot for the people there, and he's all around good dude. And I met with him basically the day we got there, maybe the day after.
Okay.
Went to lunch, and then when we had our family reunion, I invited him to the family reunion because I consider him family now. So. Great dude, does a lot of good stuff there, and he's still involved in local government, so he's got a lot of nice connections. He actually met with Department of Education for me, and I think what we'll start doing is working with them directly, because it kind of removes the local government and the politicization of our efforts. So it'll go directly to the schools, which the whole visit was good.
And I think we know any government you can remove is good.
In my opinion, yes. If they do good, I will go ahead and recognize them for that. But being that previously kids were not going to school because there was, an absence of a few bucks, tells me they weren't
$12
doing doing the right thing. So that problem's been corrected. So, go ahead, go to the DCDfoundation.org, check it out. We have some new life injected into it now, and if I can find some time, which I'm sure I will, we'll get the...
let's hope your time corresponds with the web developer's time.
We'll figure it out, man. It'll work. It'll just work. It always does.
Yeah,
so,
it does.
And our annual fundraiser's coming up, which, of course, is a private event because we can't have, 1 million people show up. But if you're invited to it, please come. It's always a good time.
Are we invited?
You already were invited.
Yeah.
So check your stuff.
He has to invite me. I print the stuff.
Yeah. You're already invited. You have to come.
I don't. It's
that's a requirement. You're actually listed as on the board. So,
yeah.
But aside from that, people have heard about Mindanao in the news and this Marawi situation.
I want to get into that because it brings up something that we've discussed off air and something that Hooper had mentioned several shows ago.
Yeah.
But why don't you talk to us about? I mean, give us the perception that's out there, because not everybody is keeping what's going on in the Philippines on their radar. Give us the perception and then give us the reality.
Well, the perception and what's actually been reported is martial law is the cause of all the problems on the island of Mindanao. And it's not exactly... the claim is that they're concerned that, this President Duterte is going to use martial law to somehow usurp some kind of authoritarian rule over the people and take advantage, and all these, crazy claims referring to what happened under Marcos. So, we really were kind of racking our brains whether we should even go, because there's 2 wars actually going on, not just one. They're fighting a war against the Muslim militants, and yes, it has everything to do with Islam, and the rebel communists as well. So, and that actually is a little closer to home for us, the rebel communists, the NPA. Not too concerned about those guys as long as you don't cross paths with them. They're not looking for me. They're anti-government, so... But I had to lay low, So I wasn't sure what to expect, and I wasn't sure if we were even going to go. And then one day I kind of woke up. I was like, you know what? We're going. I'm not going to let these devil worshippers scare me. We need to see family. It's important. And we're going to do it. We're going. So we go there. So what's being reported is this military overtaking of the island of Mindanao, and, they're abusing their authority and the poor people that live there.
Fascist rulers?
The fascist rulers. But I got to tell you, screw the news, because I was just there. And in Davao City, outside of the city. And I got to tell you, it's not what they're saying. Shock. I know it's a shock.
I can't believe it.
I know it's a shock. In fact, even more shocking, the police and the military were more friendly than they were last time I was there. That's a real shock. They're not mistreating anybody. Of course, they have the military checkpoints beefed up because it's the Ramadan bombathon that they're expecting, and we saw this.
Bombathon? Did you?
Yeah, that's exactly what I said, because that's what happened in the Middle East. It was disgusting what was going on in the Middle East during Ramadan, the fake fasting. So, we got there. I tested it at first, and when I got to the airport, I made eye contact with one of the soldiers. I kind of gave him the nod. Dude, ear-to-ear grin. He was like, what's up? And I was being reassured over and over again by multiple people that we got this place on lock. It's safe here. Don't worry. I even had one guy tell me to ignore the travel warnings. I'm like, hey, dude, a little late. I'm standing here. I kind of already ignored it. So, and people are going about their daily lives as normal, other than The few inconveniences, it's traffic's harder because there's checkpoints they have to check. And
traffic there's brutal.
It's already terrible. It's
Yeah.
Southeast Asia, so, it's chaotic and disorganized and all of that already. But, now they have to search every bus, which they were doing anyway, because stuff is always blowing up in Mindanao. And let me give you a little hint.
Are there is there stuff blowing up on other islands in the Philippines?
I'm not aware of any.
Okay, and do they have Muslim safe zones on other islands in the Philippines?
Well, I don't know. I wouldn't call it a safe zone, but it's an autonomous region, which is very different than a safe zone. And no, the answer to that is no, they don't. Only on Mindanao. And the bombings aren't.
Or do the other islands just have the good Muslims on there, the moderates?
Well, I wouldn't label Muslims as bad per se, but the belief system absolutely is. But no, it's going on only on Mindanao, and the malls have all been bombed. The bombing in the market they had last September, we stayed in the hotel right across the street from the market that was bombed in September. But they still have the market. These people aren't going to quit, man. They're not going to give up. They're still living like they always have, and good for them, because you know what? If you cave and hide,
well, this is what they want. That's the
then
goal
they win. Yeah. But I had a pretty good trip there. I mean, we couldn't go to the beach because the beaches that we go to are all in Muslim regions, all Muslim areas, so it's not safe for me to go there. That's 2 dots on a connect the dot picture. It's pretty easy to connect those. So we stayed away from that. Didn't really wander around a whole lot. We basically visited family. We went into the city a few times, and it was fine, other than traffic. When they saw me in the car, with the family in the car at the checkpoint, we rolled down the window, and they almost were like, whatever, just go. So it wasn't even like... I would say they treat people far better there under martial law than our police treats people here. And I don't know that you could argue against that very effectively.
I wouldn't know one way or the other, but I'm not going to... I trust your opinion.
I mean, you hear these cases all the time where, pregnant women getting pulled over and fathers getting tased and all this kind of nonsense. This kind of stuff's not going on. Very respectful, very, very, very cool.
There has been a big shift with the way police do their business. If you think about it, when we were young, what was the image of a cop? I mean, it's Andy Griffith and Barney Fife knocking on your door. Now it's SWAT teams.
Well, there's been a rift installed in between the people and the police forces, and this is on purpose because if you don't trust the police, then you don't call them. Because I got to be honest with you, the last thing I'm ever going to do is call the police for any reason, because I have heard people that I know personally, story after story. And again, the cops, I have family full of law enforcement. There's plenty of good cops. I get it. I'm not sitting here vilifying every single police officer, all right? But there are the story after story after story of people calling the police for help, and then the police turning it on them, trying to find ways to bust them for something.
That happened to me in Chicago.
And it's really a shame because if you don't have this mutual respect, and I think that's really what it boils down to, and not this entitlement type, way too much authority kind of attitude, then why would you ever call them?
I've actually thought about that recently. It would take a lot to call them, but they're not any organization that I view as truly being protective of me.
I don't know how you could be intellectually honest and say that 100% of the time that's the case.
Well, no, right.
You know what I mean?
And you can't make these broad statements. Don't really work because they're by and large most cops are good.
Yeah,
it does attract a certain personality type. The Napoleon disease kind of thing. Those are the guys that I think that's where so much of this trouble stems from. And then the overall, the organizational personality shift that's gone on over the years. And it's, again, thank you, Satan-owned media, because they actually throw fuel on this fire.
Yeah.
Getting the people to not trust police not to trust
anybody,
right?
Including And you know what? I've just heard too many personal accounts. I know people that have gone to prison literally for no reason and spent 8 months to a year in there while they're trying to prove that they really were just taking a nap at the time, no evidence, stuff getting buried. I mean, there's a lot of this going on. But the point I'm trying to make is I think that what's being portrayed in the media here, I have firsthand knowledge of this now because I was just there, is that what's in the news about the president there, the situation there, and what's going on that island is in some cases completely fabricated, and in others, they're literally lying. I mean, it's not really what's going on. What I found,
and Hooper brought that up a few shows ago. There was some major event in South America when you were in South America, and what you're seeing on CNN is nothing like
not
what
even
you're
close.
Experiencing.
Right?
Yeah, we were flying into Medellin. This was in
Colombia, right?
1993. Yeah, Colombia. Got family there. And as we're flying in, if you guys remember, I know you guys have all heard this story.
Yeah.
This was for the listeners. So, Pablo Escobar, Medellin cartel, drug cartel, famous guy. They've made movies about him. The U.S. was supposedly, and the Colombian police were all supposedly trying to track this guy down. But, of course, behind the scenes, you actually have the Central Intelligence Agency bolstering him up and making sure the drugs keep moving. Nonetheless, we're flying into the country, and the pilot announces to the entire airplane, Pablo Escobar's just been shot and killed. And he was killed on a rooftop while trying to escape a little police squadron. And everyone on the plane starts clapping. So we fly into the city. It's all quiet. There's a few fireworks going off, celebrations. It's calm. Everyone is talking about it, but everyone's happy. And this was in the early days of CNN, at least when CNN became available in Colombia, because up through the 80s it was really a third world country, and now it's maybe more second world. But I'm watching CNN, and the way they present it, they show what seems to be like riots happening in the very city I'm in Medellin. And they're filming these people going crazy, and they're crying, and they're upset and sad because Pablo Escobar's been killed. The impression being given to the viewing public that, oh, wow, Colombia's a bunch of drug-loving psychopaths. They're actually mad that this dude that has killed over 800 legislators, judges, and cops is dead. Really, he's brought down an entire Avianca airline with a bomb to kill one guy. I mean, that was 113 people dead right there. They made it sound like Medellin was crying over a lost hero. And that upset me. It was the first time I ever really noticed what media bias and what it is, because all they were doing was filming a little square way off out of the city, because Pablo Escobar had built a bunch of houses for his top lieutenants and the local villagers, basically to keep them quiet, and they did like him, about 100 people, but they made that seem as if it was a nation of 20 million that was doing it, and it wouldn't sink in for years later that wasn't a one-off situation, that is actually, it's a consistent, non-stop wall of BS.
All the time.
But it's not random or accidental. It's all moving in, all of it is just one little grain of sand towards, essentially, this new world order. And first you've got to make it look like there's chaos everywhere before you can establish the order ab chao. So it would take 20 more years really to figure out what was really going on. But it was disturbing at the time. It just...
Well, I know I was back to the police. I was noticing we did Strawberry Fest, a couple months ago. We had our church at a booth at Strawberry Fest, and I spent some time there in the booth. And I'm noticing...
In Belleville?
Yeah, it's a big deal in Belleville. If you're from that area, everybody knows of it. If you're not...
I worked on a strawberry farm, so I don't...
Oh, okay. Yeah, you can't find strawberries.
Yeah, there's no strawberries at the Strawberry Festival.
No, it's all at a church. It's at one church at the end of the street. There's no strawberries. So I noticed as we were meeting people and checking out the other booths and starting conversations that the cops are walking around, and this is new. I don't know how long this has been happening. These cops are in bulletproof vests. They got like 8 clips for their 9mm
at the Strawberry Festival.
At the Strawberry Fest, all the cops are vested. This is at.
I know.
It's in Belleville.
It's a small community. It's like they're ramping up for something.
And I'm like thinking to myself, I'm like, isn't that kind of overkill, or is that part of the allure? Is this part of the problem? It's empowering these cops more. They think they're really at a war. I mean, it's a freaking Strawberry Festival.
The only thing I will say about that, though, is that the media, again, thanks satanic media, they've made police legitimate targets for
they have
for sickos, and that's really a shame because, again, as big of a jackass as a cop may be, they don't deserve to be targets for snipers.
No.
But they have been. We've had these attacks, and this has gone on, and will happen more, I'm sure. So I'll give them a little bit of a pass on that. But I get what you're saying. I mean, it comes off in a small community event like that.
I mean, are these guys wearing these things in cars?
They're paramilitary now, and
it's all orchestrated.
It's unsettling.
It's all orchestrated because you're going to have, in order for the federal control.
Are they desensitizing us? Is that what's going on? They're getting us used to seeing law enforcement in bulletproof vests.
Well, I really do.
With 200 rounds of ammunition.
I really do think that's for their own protection. I mean, at any given time, you have a lot of people that want to kill cops, that they're vocal about it, they brag about it, that cops are targets, white cops are targets. It's that part of it I can understand, because if you're a police officer, I mean, I would wear one. If I knew, I was a target, they're in uniform.
Think
I mean,
about
they're marked.
the meetings back at the station that are going on, because something is said to the officers from the captain or the lieutenant, like, "Hey, this is either a policy because we're always in danger." It does create this heightened sense of alertness. And to your point, Tony, police stations all across the United States, they're definitely militarizing to a point. I mean, they're bringing in some pretty sophisticated stuff, like
those big trucks and things that they've got.
SWAT trucks, the guns, the ammunition. They're getting more powerful. Mm-hmm. Ever since that Bank of America robbery in California, I think it was late '80s, early '90s, where there was the big shootout, and the cops just did not have the firepower. I mean, that bank robbery became the poster child for seriously arming cops with much more powerful weapons and armor-piercing ammunition, etc. And it's all, if a story is out there that can help lead to, again, the end goal is a one-world government at the end of the day.
The McDonald's shooting was in San Diego in September of 1985. There was a documentary off that. 41 people were shot.
Mm-hmm. Was it a McDonald's? Why'd you call it the McDonald's shooting?
It was a McDonald's shooting. It was a gentleman who walked into McDonald's.
No, he's talking about the guys that were dressed all in armor.
This is a different.
Bullets were just bouncing off these guys.
But this isn't the only one. There were several incidents.
This was a little bit different. These guys had things that, they're shooting them and bullets are bouncing off these guys' heads. I mean,
the robbers had no cover, and they're in head-to-toe body armor.
Right.
And they're just gunning policemen down. And they can't hit them.
Yeah,
these
bullets
guys are just walking
off.
like...
Yeah. And that was when all the, and again... you could dig into that a little bit too and say, okay, then they started in with all the legislation that you and I can't own body armor, stuff like this. They want to ban all that because, who knows, right? But
would it surprise you if it was a false flag?
Nothing surprises me. In fact, from you bring up the New World Order and this plan.
That's a good point.
Who knows, right? I mean, look, and I never would have thought it then, but now nothing would surprise me because, like what I saw and read and watched while in the Philippines during this, this ISIS thing that's going on there, I have a little bit different take on it than most people. They tried to siege a city and establish their version of a caliphate on that island because they're losing ground in the Middle East. This is the claim. I don't necessarily agree with that. And, of course, it was unsuccessful because the military stopped it. I actually think that the plan was absolutely successful. In fact, it was a resounding success in my eyes because previous to this incident, that region, which is a very specific region, literally with borders. I mean, you know this autonomous region in Mindanao. They have their own government. They have borders. They have their own elected officials. I mean, it's a separate government inside a government. They practice Sharia law. They recognize Sharia law in the Philippines for Muslims, which was all of these are humongous political mistakes, in my opinion. You can see this now.
Give me a quick synopsis. What exactly does Sharia law? I mean,
well,
hear the term. What does it mean?
There's really no quick synopsis because there's a 1,000-page book that outlines what Sharia law is. So it's probably the most regressive belief system.
There's like a
on the
draconian
planet.
law.
It's worse than that. I mean, I
know it's anti-female.
It's anti-everything except Muslims, and it's actually anti-Muslim as well if you're a woman. So it's something you don't want. Right? So previous to this incident in Marawi, there was about 400,000 people, give or take, in this region. And before they attacked the city, you knew where all these people were, sympathizers and not. Now they're scattered across the whole country. And I believe that was the plan all along, because now you don't know where anybody is. You don't know who believes what. I mean, they've caught these Mauti brothers, another group that linked up with Abu Sayyaf, and they're all ISIS. It's all the same crap.
Abu Sayyaf was kind of junior high.
Well, they were Al Qaeda, and then they're ISIS
until Al Qaeda got involved.
Right, and then they got funding and weapons and all this stuff, foreign fighters training.
Prior to Al Qaeda, I was in the Philippines, and it was a joke. Abu Sayyaf was like the punchline to a joke with the Filipinos.
Yeah, except unless they cut your head off, and it's not so funny because they've always been doing this. Then you have the MILF. You have all these groups.
They weren't
there.
organized like they are.
Not like they are now, and now they have literally an army, and now you got the Mauti group involved as well. And part of the problem is a very common practice in the Philippines is to get jobs in the Middle East and go abroad for work because there's no work there. The problem with this is the Philippines is a Christian country made up of predominantly Christians. And when you insert yourself into a culture that cannot be your friend based on their most basic ideology, you've now put yourself in a situation where you may be forced to convert just so you can keep breathing. If, of course, you're not strong in faith and you're a coward. So these guys go to the Middle East. They get what they call radicalized. I think they just became the real deal. Come back to the Philippines. They're all linked up with ISIS. Now they got funding. They got weapons that the military's shocked at. They don't run out of ammunition. Still haven't. I think 7 weeks now this is going on. They're still fighting. So they've caught the brothers' elderly parents running guns and money. You have people now holding infants blowing themselves up. I mean, there's really no limit to... So you can't even... You don't know. These people now have been scattered all over the country, and many of them are just fine. I mean, they're fine, but they still subscribe to the same ideology. That's the problem. It doesn't change the belief just because they're peaceful. There's not a Quran Part 2 that they're reading. It's the same damn book. So whether they act on it or not is a whole other story.
Yeah, but don't you think they have the same characteristic that Christians have, which is they haven't read their own Bible? They're just going off of
that's the whole
church
point.
Elders.
That's the whole point of this is so that if it is to expose it for what it is, because I think if they knew the truth, a lot of Muslims would leave that faith because it's because it is absolutely evil and violent. Clearly. I mean, this can be proven so easy. If watching the television isn't enough, talk to people who live in these regions. That'll tell you. And if you still don't believe it, then read it for yourself. It's just all right there. I mean, it's not hidden anymore. All these books were translated in the 90s. We have access to all these sources now. And so do the people in the faith, right? But if you leave it, you're an apostate and they will kill you because they're instructed to do so. So if you live in these regions, and you decide to leave the faith, you're risking your neck. So they don't, and they stick with it. So now you have this belief system has metastasized in the Philippines. And why the Philippines? Why not Indonesia or Malaysia or other Southeastern Asian countries? And I believe it's simple, because Satan doesn't really care who you worship as long as it's not God. And the Philippines is a Christian nation, no question about this. Now, it's predominantly Catholic, but I'll go ahead and kick that out of this equation for now for the purpose of discussion. It's 95% Christian.
Because I don't think Satan has a problem with most Catholics. I think he's
what I'm saying. I know, I get it, but those people there, though, man, they are. There's no question about the Philippines is a Christian nation. It's very Western. The culture is very Western. It's very not Asian. It's definitely not Muslim, except for this little region, less than 5% of the population.
The Philippines is very interesting. I mean, they have these they have these little shacks, and you walk in, and there's big screen TVs, and everybody's got an iPhone. And
well, when it's like 90 degrees in every day, and you're that's and I give them credit, man. They are absolute survivors. They know how to get it done. They know how to live, and for being mired in poverty the way they are, I have yet to come across another group of people that are happier and more generous than Filipinos in the Philippines.
Yep.
And not everybody, of course. You have bad people everywhere. But as a whole, I've had nothing but positive experiences in the Philippines, more than any other place, including here in the great old USA. So now you have this, that's what the president is trying to stop, because I feel like he's tuned in, just like our president's tuned in, to what the hell it is that's really going on here, and he's trying to stop it. And what I found very, very interesting, we have all these left-wing kooks in the streets here laying across the roads with banners, all this stuff. The same crap is going on in the Philippines. It is mind-boggling. It's the same exact thing. We got caught in traffic one night because these guys, they call it a rally, but it's a protest. Stop militarization now, blah, blah, blah. What they don't realize, and they're all college kids, and it's known that they're being paid to do it. They're being paid to protest and disrupt traffic and disrupt, everything. When what they call militarization is saving their own hide. They don't get it. If he was to lift this tomorrow, this martial law, which is actually an emergency police action, it's not martial law, because by definition, martial law is radically different than what's going on there. That whole island would be toast.
Well, they'd have to send Katy Perry over there.
Well,
Teach them how to hug it out.
Well, how to hug it out, how to blow up in their borders. But that's easy to do when you're worth like $300 million, and don't have to live among the hazard class, which is us and people there. So I we were there towards the end of Ramadan, so they're all amped up, from their fake fasting. Manila looked different than I've ever seen.
What is the Ramadan fasting?
It's the 9th month of the Muslim lunar calendar, and for 30 days during daylight hours, they can't eat or have sex, or there's some other thing too. So when the sun goes down, they go nuts, and it's also
I could celebrate, and it wouldn't affect my life at all to participate in Ramadan.
Yeah, but I'll just go ahead and do it during the day too, because it's fake, so it doesn't matter.
Well, they'd be sleeping, so
so that's what it is, and they also get, they are amped up in a way that's different than the rest of the year, and what I mean by that is that they believe that their faith is a superior faith, and everyone else is beneath them. It's very intolerant belief system, very intolerant.
Which is odd.
Well, I know, considering the fact that we see it every day, what it yields. So people are traveling from, coming in from out of other countries. I saw a lot of people from Africa, Muslims there. It's very interesting that they're going to Mindanao all of a sudden. Now, it could be family. I get it. It's a big celebration for them. But the atmosphere there was very different than even just 2 years ago. Very different. It's becoming more bold. It's becoming more in your face. And the people there, honestly, I think they're not concerned enough about it. But they're becoming concerned. I mean, it's an unfortunate thing because if you really just scratch the surface of that ideology, because that's what it is, you'll realize that it's utterly dangerous to anyone who's not part of the club. And the teachings inside there, it's not surprising that we have the problems that we have and that we see this going on. And if you look at aerial photos of this city, man, I mean, it is gone. There's almost no buildings left. It looks like pictures of World War II Europe. They just carpet bomb the whole place because they've been spending years digging underground tunnel systems to go from building to building and access waterways, and that's how they're getting their wounded out and getting supplies back in. And they now jungle fighters are forced to participate in urban warfare, which is something the Filipino Army's not used to, even the Special Forces. I mean, these are jungle fighters, man. These guys know what they're doing. They're real pros, but in a tight quarters urban environment and everything's booby-trapped, when they get them out of a building, there's always IEDs left behind. So, I mean, everything is absolutely destroyed. So there's no going back to this city. I mean, to rebuild it is impossible because the infrastructure is just not there. You have this autonomous region there, which is literally a gigantic welfare state. They don't produce anything. That's another shocker, I'm sure, that really surprises everybody. 98% of their money comes from the Filipino government. So who's going to rebuild it? And why would you rebuild it when you see what that it's bred having this there? These guys are protected there. They're on TV there. They're on the radio there, allowed to spout their hate and their nonsense.
Right, and even goes so far because of their observance of their sovereignty, I guess, that when, like, if someone who lives in that region goes outside of the region into the rest of the Philippines, commits a crime, they just go back and hide in that region, and the police are not allowed to go in there after them.
What I've learned is they
have to choose.
Well, this actually applies to neighborhoods as well, because they have their own royalty within their tribes. And if you are Muslim in the Philippines, Sharia law applies to you, which violates the rights of Filipinos. It's a you look back on it and wonder how this went down and why. It's very interesting to me that anyone in a position of power like the president, who's supposed to be smart, would ever agree to something like this. Because
who agreed to that? Who made that?
I believe
happen?
It was Ramos. Don't quote me on that, but I think it was Ramos. But
it's just I don't understand that. They're talking about that, doing that in Dearborn and things too, right?
Dude, it's a disaster.
Yeah,
it's a complete nightmare because
Can't happen.
It won't ever. The whole philosophy behind it is childish. So if you agree to this, giving them their autonomous region, you really think that's where it's going to stop? Really, you really think that? Because now what they want
with Dearborn.
Now they want the whole island.
Sure.
It'll start with Dearborn, and then they'll want the whole state. Why? Because this is what their belief system teaches them to do.
Right.
This will never stop. It's never stopped. It's been going on since the 7th century. Let's just be honest about it. And if we think there's going to be some revelation, a kumbaya moment, there's not going to be ever. This will never stop, ever.
No, it was written about. It was talked about. It's knowledge that's out there, right?
It's there.
This is what they're doing. This is
Right, but it's not knowledge that's being broadcast.
Well, no, because when you broadcast it, you are a hateful bigot racist, which is interesting because
it's not even a race.
Well, Islam is not a race, and telling the truth, last time I checked, doesn't make you a bigot.
Well,
depends on what side.
Yeah, you're not. I mean, you're arguing using common sense and logic. That's not how they play.
Obviously,
they don't. Your honest questions are not answered with facts. They're answered with accusations that are baseless. They don't even make sense.
Well, you'll notice that the answers are always either verbal abuse, right?
Yeah.
They'll attack you, say stuff about your wife.
Always condescending.
Right. Say stuff about your kids, whatever would attack your faith. Or it's threats of physical or actual physical violence.
Right.
There's never really ever an intelligent exchange because if there ever was, they would be destroyed in less than 10 minutes because their arguments can't.
They don't hold up.
I mean, seriously.
So a quick thing on Ramadan, just to clarify Ramadan for anybody interested who's listening and doesn't know what it is. Dave's right. It's the 9th month of the Islamic calendar, and it is about. It is fasting to commemorate the first revelation of the Quran to Muhammad.
Ah, okay.
And during Ramadan, you are to refrain from consuming food, drinking liquids, smoking, and engaging in sexual relations.
Okay, yeah. But at sunset...
I do like the noodles, though.
Yeah.
The Ramadan
noodles?
Ramadan noodles. See, that makes you a bigot, Tony.
Yeah.
You're a hateful Islamophobe.
Hey,
that
was a xenophobic comment, wasn't it?
Well, that brings me to this, when people use the term Islamophobe or Islamophobia, that infers an irrational fear of something, right?
Yeah.
But there's nothing irrational about it. It certainly isn't fear. It's literally just telling it like it is. The guidelines are simple. Sitting here, us as Christians, we're less than human. In fact, if you read deep enough, they can't be your friend. They certainly can't have you as helpers or protectors. And also, to top it right off, they're supposed to fight you and kill you. I mean, so there's plenty of support for this in their own book that they claim doesn't say these things.
For what it's worth, I've read decent swaths of the Quran at this point. It reads a lot like the Bible does.
On purpose.
Well, it's you can tell a lot of passages are taken right out of the Bible, and then it was twisted just a little bit. Jesus wasn't the Son of God; he was just a prophet.
He didn't die, by the way.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's dangerous.
But they could probably say the same thing about Christianity. Oh, well, look at their God. He's woman commits adultery, let's go stone her. I mean, they're wiping out entire villages when the Jews are trying.
Yeah,
to
but you can totally destroy that.
Covenant.
You can destroy that argument in 10
right,
seconds.
but I don't know Islam well enough to know if there aren't those sort of. I mean, you've got to be pretty familiar with a book or a religion to be able to talk about that.
Well, you can.
The passages I've read are, by and large, relatively peaceful and nice.
Right, because those are the passages they're putting out there to make you believe it's peaceful
no, this
and
is
nice.
me opening up the book and just taking a page.
It doesn't really take long to put two and two together and understand why they bomb Western embassies, why they are constantly at odds with the West, because they have to be. They can never make peace with the West. It's against their ideology. And let's be honest. Islam is actually a political ideology. Islamism and Islamists who run these countries in the Middle East are nothing but violent hate mongers. And oddly enough, speaking out against this belief system is more in protection of Muslims than non-Muslims, because more than 95% victims of Islamic terror are other Muslims. So, I'm in defense of them as well, because they're being victimized by their own belief system. And their leaders have been lying to them about what the book says, and lying to them about what the Bible says, actually, and making up BS so that they can control these people. And it's really a shame, because there's a lot of good folks that are getting sucked into a belief system that threatens their very soul, and it's too bad. And then it gets to a certain point where it starts threatening the safety of other good people, and then it becomes a real problem for me. Keep in mind, my wife and kids, at the end of their trip, they're still there. If everything goes well and they get on a plane and it makes it, they get to come home. But the rest of her family doesn't get to leave. They're stuck there with this nonsense. So I'll be damned if I'm going to sit here and candy coat this and make it sound like this is just some hateful speech for no reason. These people are absolutely in danger every single day because of a regressive, violent belief system. Flat out, bottom line. And I'm done being nice about it, to be quite honest. It needs to be called out for what it is. Because how much more do we need to see before we realize that this is what the truth is?
Yeah, I mean, you look at what's going on in the Philippines. I mean, do you not think that that's us looking into the future of what's going to happen here?
It absolutely is.
Because to be honest with you, I mean, in the Philippines at least, I think there's enough power in the executive branch of government and in the military that if they don't, they have more power than our executive branch.
I believe so.
And so if something's happened, they don't like it. Well, they'll just take care of it. If it's bad for the people, they'll take care of it.
Yeah.
That's not going to happen. It's going to be worse here. Because we could screw up a wet dream.
Yeah, well, and there's a flip side to that too, is that kind of power concentrated in one branch of government is also very dangerous. The same exact thing can happen as a result of
I totally understand,
right?
but you get where I'm coming from.
I do absolutely get it. And
there'll be protests in the street with college students, wanting everything to continue. Oh, they just killed a few people. It's okay.
Well, here's a good example of something being twisted, okay? There was a governor, I believe, the governor of Utah. It was after a terrorist attack. And he gave a speech in the city square. I want to say it was Utah. No, it might have been Colorado. I'll have to look it up, and you could probably find it if you look it up. But he gave this speech. And it was a call to peace, like a hug-in, as you put it.
I think Oregon, actually, I think that's what you're talking about.
I'm not sure. I forget. But
hug-in.
The point is and I found this interesting because it's a total sellout of the left. It really is. They've completely sold out to Islam, and I don't understand it. I'm still trying to figure that part out. But
Islam's a tool for them.
It probably is. But he gave an interesting speech where he quoted a verse in the Quran, which actually in the Quran itself is listed as a weak verse, which means they only take it kind of serious. But nevertheless, he goes on to quote Muhammad, who said something, I'm paraphrasing, that basically we just need to love each other more. And then went on to quote Jesus secondary, saying, love your enemies, bless those that do you harm. That verse. Everyone's familiar with that verse. Love your neighbors, you love yourself. And went on to give this nice feel-good speech about we all just need to love each other more. The problem with it is that quote from Muhammad was misquoted. If you read it, what he's talking about is loving other Muslims, loving other believers. Allah and the Quran has no love for non-believers. That's just a fact. May be hard for some people to swallow that. Read it for yourself.
You may not like it. You may want to.
I wish it was different.
Me too.
But it's not.
But it is what it is.
So that crap gets blasted on national television for everyone to see, so everyone thinks, oh, look, Muhammad was this good guy, and he had really good teachings, when clearly, if you dig deep enough, he was totally a false prophet. He's got all these people fooled, and it's been used for nothing more than conquest and destruction ever since he walked on the earth. That was a misquote of something for some other purpose. At least be honest about it and just leave that out and just quote Jesus, because we're very clear on what Jesus is talking about when he says bless your enemies. Love your enemies, because God also loves your enemies. He brings rain on both the righteous and the unrighteous. But Allah doesn't have the same story. Allah doesn't love non-believers either. So that's where Muhammad gets this from, his own God. So this is just the facts that are in there. So here you have a governor, I believe he's a governor, he might have been a mayor of the city, coming out and spreading this really misinformation.
My question is, who's he spreading it to?
Whoever's listening.
Yeah,
well, because you don't need to tell me that, right? I'm not going out killing anybody.
Again, it's
the whole they're trying to
They're speaking for Muslims.
They're speaking for Muslims, yeah.
Right?
They're trying to normalize Islam.
First of all,
they're trying to tell you that Islam and Christianity
I understand
have the same goal.
But the point is that's not if that
which ultimately they do. Both Islam and Christianity want to be the religion of the world. They want to conquer the world spiritually. The difference is the method in which they choose to conquer.
A conquest is the wrong word.
The difference I see is someone that uses religion to go kill somebody else. There's no sense. There's nothing to talk about.
Yeah, it's pretty much bad.
There's nothing to talk about there. That person, is out to kill you, or innocent people, or whoever. There's no linking them to anything. They should be gone. Take them out.
It's never.
You're not gonna hold hands and all of a sudden if someone's willing to cut your head off for your religion, there is no sense trying to have a conversation with that person.
Unless you're trying to get them to hear the truth, and then in which case I think that's worthwhile, and it's a peaceful approach. Because if they were to actually understand...
It depends on if they have their sword drawn or not.
Well, again, I mean,
Yeah, if you're actively participating is what I'm talking about.
You're
actively participating.
I still think, let's face it, we're talking about God here. If he's going to change... If anyone can change somebody's heart, he can.
Agreed.
So if exposing the truth is a peaceful means of trying to get this to stop spreading, I think it's a worthwhile endeavor. Mm-hmm. Not saying it will succeed. My personal opinion is that it won't. I think there's a very big part of, Armageddon here that they play part in. But either way, from one person to the other person to the next person, if the truth will be able to be spread enough to where people will go, wait a minute. The problem is that it's gone so far that really the West hasn't had access to this information until literally the 90s. Stuff wasn't translated until then. So these governments that are in place and these dynasties that are running countries like Saudi Arabia, things like this, you're not free to leave the faith and then become a Christian or an atheist for that matter. Mm-hmm. You do not have this ability. You cannot just say, I don't believe in God at all anymore. You don't even have that freedom. Because that label that makes you an apostate or a hypocrite, and you're namely called out in this book for being an apostate or a hypocrite. And many of these places, the punishment for this is execution. So you're stuck with the status quo. You're stuck with, you got to show a little bit of compassion for the people who live in these areas because they're largely uneducated, number one. And number two, don't have a whole lot of choice in the matter because there's a lot of places where they will cut your head off for this. Mm-hmm. It's not like here where, us as Christians, we could tomorrow wake up and say, you know what? This is all crap. I'm done with it. Yeah. I'm done. I am just done. I don't believe in any of it anymore. I'm just going to be an atheist. Or insert any other belief system here. You can do this, and Christians will not come after you. The prescription for this, they're not going to come after Christians. Violent. Let me just say it again. Christians will not come after you.
I'm not saying Christians. I'm saying you're saying this is in our country, which is currently true. But the movement where it's going, that is not necessarily true.
Maybe not, but you can leave. Well, I don't know. You can leave Christianity here. They probably would like that. Oh, yeah. I don't think that you're going to receive the death penalty for leaving Christianity.
No.
If there's a case of this in modern times, let me know. But I don't think so. I think it's a free will choice. You can do this if you want. And in the regions where...
I guess my point is, as of right now, that's true. But the way that what is being pushed upon America is the same thing that's going on across the world.
Which is what?
which is they're pushing to bring in Muslims. They're pushing for the
I would say that
pushing
fits
for.
right into what I just said. You can leave Christianity and it's just fine.
Yeah.
No one's going to come after you and kill you for this.
Right.
Especially not a Christian, because you don't do this kind of thing to anybody
just
for
to
any
be
reason.
devil's advocate, though, and a lot of people confuse Christianity with the Catholic Church.
Of course.
The Vatican is
about.
responsible for a lot of dead people, probably more than Islam, I might even say, throughout
But
history.
they do that in the name of the Vatican, not in the name of Christ.
Well, again, but there's, even in the United States, even with Christians, they don't discern the difference between
Right.
Catholic and Christian. I
It's
mean,
because they're ignorant.
Of course. And mass murder has nothing to do with Christianity. So you can't even connect the dots on this one. There's no way to even connect that, because Jesus never taught anything of the sort. In fact, he taught the exact opposite of that. So my point is that, it's real easy, because I do it. I get real pissed and really angry. But if you kind of try to put yourself in that situation, that's a tough go, man. I mean, I have read reports of young kids, man, as young as 8, 9, 10 years old, being held at knife point, telling them to denounce Jesus Christ, and they refused, and they were murdered for it. So, that is an act of faith and bravery I don't know that most adults have, by the way. But this is going on in a lot of places on the earth. So
let's do this, because we got a break coming
I'm
up.
throw in one clarification before we break. I just want to throw in that the autonomous region in Muslim Mindanao was formed in 2008, and Arroyo was the president at the time.
it wasn't sooner than that?
No.
Interesting. Good enough.
So just want to throw that out there. Dave, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, maybe we shift gears a little bit for the second hour, but we start with something in the Quran. There are a few prophecies in the Quran, and there's one that has to do with the moon landings in 1969.
I want to hear it.
Oh,
All
that's
right,
interesting.
so why don't we talk about that
Yeah.
one?
Okay, I want to take a quick break.
50 citing this letter that it existed. But it is
I like that, Roger.
Yeah. Very cool.
It's kind of nice. Welcome back to Down the Rabbit Hole. We paid a few bills. We're back. We're going to turn the discussion over a little bit. Dave's got some interesting material he wants to provide on Islam, so I'm going to let Hoops take over for a second here. What you got, Hoops?
Yeah, we're just going to kind of morph this into we can really move this into free societies, or secret societies and Freemasons, which we were talking about outside. So I wanted to include, this is coming from the 401 book, which is really should be like the 1401 book or 1801 book at this point. Either way, though, I went looking for prophecies in the Quran. Just starting off with a normal Google search, and this led me into lots of different parts of the Quran, and there's not a lot of prophecies in there, but there are a couple. So here was an interesting one, and for me, this is evidence that Satan's one world government plan was at least known by Satan by 632 AD. At least that early. So we're now 600 years past the crucifixion of Christ. I think his plan of overt rule through fear and ritual sacrifices and all the government systems that practice that was going to end. Because now all of a sudden, all you have to do is believe in this crucified Son of God, and you're out of Satan's grip. So he had to come up with a new plan to fool everyone. And this is the first hard piece of evidence, at least what I consider hard piece of evidence, of Satan planning something he sees in the future. So the passage in the Quran, and this is from Sera, or chapter 54, 1 to 2. And the quote is this. Now remember, this is written in a different language. There's different translations, so depending on which source or which version of the Quran you're reading, it can read a little differently. But the version that we're quoting in the book is, "The moon has split and the hour has drawn closer." Okay? The moon has split and the hour is drawn. Very cryptic. However, Muslims, or inside Islamic religious communities, let's say, they view this as a fulfilled prophecy that was fulfilled in 1969 when Neil Armstrong and friends, who else was on that one? Buzz Aldrin, I think, and Shepard, whoever, the Apollo 11. They brought some moon rocks from the moon and brought them back to Earth. And that point, the moon was split. Like, literally, part of the moon was pulled away from the moon and brought. And Muslims view this as a fulfilled prophecy, one of the few. So here's the passage as it reads now in the book. It is still not finally edited, so you might get some of my rough notes. Reads like this. Muslims believe the Quran was verbally revealed by God to Muhammad through the angel Gabriel, or Jibril, Jibril. That's how he's pronounced and known in the Quran. Revealed to Muhammad through the angel Gabriel gradually over a period of approximately 23 years, beginning on December 22nd of 609 CE, when Muhammad was about 40. And these visions, these revelations continued from 609 to 632, the year Muhammad died. One of the few prophecies in the Quran, it's Sera 54:1, chapter 54 of the Quran, is entitled The Moon, and indicates the splitting of the moon is a sign that the end of the world is drawing close. And the follow-up passages after verses 1 and 2, they do go in talking like this is now the last days when this happens. Interesting that the Quran would say when part of the moon is broken off from the moon and brought back. I don't think it says brought back to Earth, but when
it's split is what it says.
That we are now in the last days. The moon is split and the hour is drawn closer. Then they saw a great miracle. This is from the Quran. Then they saw a great miracle, but they turned away and said, old magic. They disbelieved, followed their opinions, and adhered to their old traditions. This is now the Quran 54:1, now to 54:3. The prophecy refers to the fact that Armstrong and Aldrin collected 21 kilograms of lunar rocks to bring back to Earth. The prophecy was fulfilled at the very moment the astronauts left the moon in the lunar module containing 21 kilograms of rocks that had belonged to the moon. The date this prophecy came to pass was on July 21st, 1969. The moment the prophecy was fulfilled is confirmed by the hour of departure of the lunar module, which left the lunar surface at, this is universal time, 17 hours, 54 minutes, 10 seconds. 17:54:1 or 1:54 in the afternoon, Eastern Daylight Time here in the U.S. And as if you have seen above, it's interesting because the minute they supposedly left the moon, it's 1:54 and 10 seconds Eastern Daylight Time. And it's verse 54:1, and they're leaving the moon at the exact moment matching the verse number. 54:1 is the verse that deals with the moon. The next line predicts that many people will determine the moon landing a hoax, saying they're using... Now remember, you got to understand, this is language from 632 AD, saying that they're using magic. Now, they didn't have words like faked photography and... how many people think the moon landing is a hoax because they're using trickery? Many. In fact, if you look into it, it becomes kind of obvious after a while. The next line predicts that many people will determine the moon landing a hoax. My opinion is that whoever is behind the Quran is also behind NASA. NASA has been caught in hundreds of easily verifiable deceptions, including the moon landing. The Bible gives Satan the title of the deceiver of the whole world. Did you ever notice that NASA logo has a red serpent tongue cutting through it, forming the letter T? This is an anagram for Satan, by the way. NASA and its, quote-unquote, leaks of activity in space would be integral to an extraterrestrial deception. If there is a God, and I believe there is, it stands to reason that either the Quran or the Bible is the true word of God, rendering the other a counterfeit. So there's only two books that are claimed to be by God. It's the Bible and the Quran. Is there another book anyone?
Well, you can include like the Torah, the Talmud. Like those are Abraham.
But those
type,
are all in the Bible. I mean,
right.
the Torah
is the Old
is
Testament.
the beginning of the Bible, and actually, the Old Testament is shared really between the Christian Bible and the Islamic Quran.
Kinda.
They certainly agree on the first 5 books. I mean, Abraham. This is basically the separation of Abraham's 2 kids, Isaac and Ishmael. Ishmael becomes Islam, and Isaac becomes Christianity, basically. With a remnant of Hebrews still, Israelis mostly, half in Israel, half in the United States, about 7 million Jews in each country, making up the vast majority of the Jewish population and they're just Christians, they just don't know it yet. I mean, they're still waiting for the Messiah to show up the first time. So there's only 2 books out there that really are the Word of God, or claimed to be the Word of God. And I'm broad stroking this. And one of them is a counterfeit. Maybe they're both counterfeits, but they can't both be true because they're in conflict. So I found it interesting that in 632 AD there is writings about at some point way down the road the moon is something is gonna get pulled off of the moon, pulled away from it, and all the people of Earth are a lot of them are gonna believe, and a lot of them are gonna say this was false. And I think that's Satan's way of preempting conspiracy theorists. Because how many of them today... The moon landing is one of the only positive conspiracies. You guys know what I mean by that?
No.
9/11's a negative conspiracy. Evil was done. Buildings were brought down. There was destruction. Okay? Those are hard enough to look at. But a positive conspiracy is, why would we lie about doing something marvelous? We went to another orb in the sky. I mean, this is American greatness. This is a positive thing. Why fake that? I mean, of course there are reasons why, but it puts the moon landing in a different type of category because it's something that Americans are very proud of. It was the sign, in a sense, that we had beaten communism, which took an early lead in the space race, and we ended up catching and overcoming it. And in 632 AD, someone that I clearly believe... Do I believe Muhammad was real? Absolutely. Do I believe he had visions? Absolutely. Do I believe they were from the powers of heaven? No, I do not. I believe that he was in contact with a demon, maybe the head demon himself, but it's clear that those visions can be counterfeited, and I think that was the first, at least the first I've been able to find, the first piece of documented proof that there's going to be a deception at some point. And Satan's already preparing his Muslim people to, they're going to say it's fake. Don't you believe them. We really went to the moon. It's really up in the sky. And we really are a ball in the middle of space. And this sets up, of course, the possibility of, what's in our skies. There's something up there. The big question is it UFOs from another planet, or little green men, or are they just demons in disguise? And I think we all agree on what we think they really are, demons in disguise. And
with diamonds.
What's that?
With diamonds.
Demons in the sky with diamonds.
This is Elton John song.
Beatles.
Those Beatles, yeah, right. LSD.
Technically.
So
I like throwing you off track, Dave.
No, I was actually wondering for a sec if Elton John wrote it for the Beatles, but that was a Beatles song. Let's go make some Beatles records. So what do you guys think of that?
I think that your take on it is interesting because, it's an honest take on it. I think that you've clearly, without coming right out and saying it, you pointed out which book is counterfeit. Because I happen to agree with that. It's counterfeit. Easily proven, simply just looking at the crucifixion of Jesus himself, which the Quran claims didn't actually succeed. He didn't die. He actually was saved at the last minute and survived crucifixion. So, interesting that there'd be a actual prophecy that could be interpreted coming true for real, actually, out of that book.
Well, so I'm on a lot of
So it's interesting. I've never heard that before.
chat rooms of Quran believers, and they proudly talk of this as a fulfillment of the Quran. Like, this is a sign that the Quran is true.
Is it the first one?
What's that?
Is it the first one for them?
First
Prophecy.
Fulfilled prophecy of the Quran that differs from the Bible?
Good question. I don't know.
I don't know, because I know most of the prophecies in there are end times prophecies, as far as their version of the end times, end of the world, the Antichrist, their version of this.
For some reason, I'm going to say there's about a. Don't quote me here, but I've come across other people saying that there's about a dozen prophecies in the Quran.
Yeah, I don't know the number, but
And the dark side has a rough idea of what's going to happen.
Of course, sure. Yeah.
Satan, and I do believe that we are just relearning technology that was lost to humanity from
Prior to
maybe
the flood.
before the flood, whatever. So I think he knew that, not maybe that we were going to go to the moon, but we were going to have the technology to fake it, to make
Could be.
people believe that we really went. And that moon visit is absolutely critical because, as Sir Fred Hoyle said in 1948, the minute we get a picture of Earth from space, all of a sudden everything's going to change because we're going to realize that this is a little ball. That debate was still going on even right after World War II. Literally, that people weren't sure, what's the shape of what we're living on here? And I just view it as if I were Satan, just the same way if I'm sending my kid in something, I'm going to be, look, here's what they're going to teach you in school. They're going to teach you evolution is what happened. But, buddy, that's not the case. You're going to preempt their story. And when you can do that with someone, they've already got guards up. They're not going to. And this, I think, gives Muhammad, prophetic.
Street cred, man.
Yeah, thank you. That's the word I was looking for. But that does not match up anywhere to the 2,000 prophecies that are in the Bible. I mean, the Bible also predicted the whole world would be deceived. So in a way, it is also saying the same thing. But on this particular one, the Quran was actually pretty specific.
Yeah.
The Bible is specific on thousands of them. But this one I totally get because it's basically saying that they're going to think it's a hoax, but it's not a hoax. The real believers will know that we really went to the moon. But there will be people out there that Satan, knowing that, eventually the truth will come out, and there will be this group of people that won't believe it, claiming old magic, which is special effects.
Yeah, right. Black magic, whatever however you want to classify that. Interesting. It's the first time I've heard that. The moon prophecy. Huh.
What are you guys' opinions on the moon landings? Have you guys gotten your own?
I've never looked into it.
I look at the. It's
I've never
looked. When you're looking at different pictures, the one that always strikes me funny is they've got the picture of the moon landing and stuff going on, and the question mark is, well, who took this picture? That's the one that always cracks me up. I'm like, who took that picture?
Yeah. I've never really looked into it deep.
No, I haven't looked into that anymore, and I've looked into flat Earth, but I understand the reason why it's important that we landed on the moon.
Yeah.
Well, see, you could just you made the comment that it was a positive false flag or conspiracy, right? Which you can explain by saying this was a plot by the government to break down the Russians, and they can justify it.
Yeah, I could even see astronauts. They're pulled into some high-level meeting with the same way you can convince military generals to let 9/11 happen because we got to get in the Middle East. We've got to get oil. I mean, we're in big trouble here. You could see the same thing going on in the 1960s. Just look, guys, we've got to show the world we are technology. We've got to show the Russians. So we can't actually go to the moon, but we need you guys to sell it. We need you guys. Are you guys in for America? I could see astronauts doing that.
Sure. I mean,
they look at the press conference of the 3 astronauts, and they look like they're
very
dog
strange.
died.
It's very strange. That whole thing is very odd. Also, let's just say for a second that it went down exactly as they said, and every dollar spent on it is exactly what they said, and the whole thing is absolutely true and real and happened. Why did we do that?
Why?
What is the purpose?
It was the biggest waste of time and money I can think of.
Well, here's a story. U.S. military proposes new branch in space, dubbed Space Corps.
Okay, and that's
why
good for what?
Exactly.
I mean, I'm just thinking of I don't know. You probably could have.
Because we've got to embody the spirit of Columbus. Let's explore unexplored territory.
And here's another one. You got Stephen Hawking. Okay, the story's about Stephen Hawking. I don't know if it's really Stephen Hawking talking, but
it's a speaking spell.
But saying, "Hey, we've got to go out and explore other planets. We've got to
because this one's toast.
Because this was toast.
Yeah,
it's like, well, why do you have to go somewhere else then? Just live with it till it's done. What are you?
Well, it's ignoring the truth of this world, which will dissolve like snow.
Yeah.
One day, the light switch will be turned off. I
still do find it odd that we spend in today's dollars a few trillion to go to the moon, but we haven't set a team up to the top of Mount Ararat to see what the hell that thing is that's up there.
I would be cool with I don't know. Feeding some kids. I mean, maybe clean water might be kind of cool. I don't know. Just saying. Why spend all this money on this stuff? It gets us nowhere.
Well, that was a heroic time for America. It was a victory in the Cold War.
It was the complete absence of humility. It was embarrassing, in my opinion.
Look, but I was proud of it for a long time until I came to believe that it was very much like 9/11. You got to look at the whole thing. Yes, you can explain squibs by themselves. You could explain why the roof caved in first, how the thing fell at free fall speed. But when you take it all together, you just all of a sudden it just hits you, oh my God, this is a total sham. And that is what the moon landings are. That there are so many stupid mistakes that a 3-hour analysis of what was really going on, and a lot of people have broken into this. And yes, of course, the debunkers are out there making anyone calling this a hoax, making them look stupid, like there is for 9/11 and for Sandy Hook and JFK and blah, blah, blah,
and
blah, blah,
evolution
blah.
And everything else.
Exactly.
Right.
There are a lot of agents, knowingly or unknowingly, working on behalf of evil. So, like I said, sometimes not even aware of it themselves. So that was absolutely a staged event. It's not even close.
Yeah, I've really never looked, into that one deep. Because like you, I guess I don't really care that much.
And you don't need to it's not like you need to get all of NASA in on it. So you got this big control room, and it's got 100 NASA guys working. And, there's the one guy that's reading the vitals of Shepard, and then there's another guy reading the vitals of Aldrin. They're really reading the vitals. They're not in on it. They're just looking at their computer screen in 1969. They're doing their job. And yes, a rocket really did take off from that launch pad. Those rockets were real. Those Titan missiles were real. They were made by our defense contractors. There really was a little buggy made, which was made out of a Jeep, by the way. It's got the same frame dimensions. I mean, it's so easy to see. It wasn't an $8 million vehicle. It was just a Jeep outfitted to look like a... And you can see all the video of the astronauts bouncing around. You play the video at double speed, and they're just walking. All of a sudden, they're just walking. They just slowed the video down by half. And that's how they gave this impression of the moon being a...
Yeah, low gravity.
But these guys on the moon that should weigh, even with all their backpacks, the equivalent of about... Because weight is about 1/6 on the moon as it is here. So these guys that weigh... these are smaller guys. They're in a lunar module. They weigh like 160, 170, and with their equipment, they're 220-some pounds. But they're really only about 35, 40 pounds. Now, if you only weigh 35 or 40 pounds and you're on the moon, you should be able to jump, they figured, 20, 30 feet in the air. But these guys never jump higher than they would on Earth. And it's one of the questions. Why didn't they ever show these guys jumping like crazy? I mean, why wouldn't you want to do that?
Right.
That'd be sweet.
Yeah, that would be the first thing I would do, actually.
You can also see shots where pulleys that they have, like, they get yanked. Like, it's bad special effects. There's so many stupid mistakes. If there's one light source, which is the sun, anything in a shadow should be in complete darkness because that was the only light source that they claimed they had. They didn't backlight any stage. Yet you'll notice that in the shadows, it's incredibly well lit. You can see the USA flag and you can see the foil. And that's another thing. Foil, okay? First of all, if this thing's traveling at what, 20, 30,000 miles an hour is what it topped out?
Something like that.
It's
fast.
All it would take is a speck of dust to just happen to be in your path, and that thing is going to rip through your ship. It's game over.
Yeah.
Like, this is so ridiculously... It's just laughable. Even today, we still can't land rockets vertically, yet we were able to do it with a calculator computer, the equivalent of a modern-day calculator. So you don't need all these people in on it. You do need the astronauts, maybe one or two guys at mission control, and everyone else just needs to do their job. And it's the compartmentalization and specialization of society in general, but certainly at NASA, where... Again, you don't ask. Like, I was there, dude. What are you talking about? It was a fake thing. You can't.
It's another one you really can't talk about because people think you're nuts.
Oh, they think you're insane.
Oh, yeah, especially that one. That's right up there, like we said, with Flat Earth. I mean, if you even come out and say the Earth's flat or anything like that, then yeah, of course you're immediately
don't you
labeled
find
as
it
a
funny
nutbag.
that probably the two most controversial, along with Sandy Hook, but the two most controversial conspiracy theories that have been around for a while: flat Earth, moon landing. Okay,
yeah.
Don't you find it odd that the ones that people dismiss the most quickly are linked?
Right. Yeah, inextricably. I mean, they're absolutely linked.
You're trained. If you hear flat Earth or moon landing, the same kind of disgust should come across your face.
Yeah, and I don't argue one way or the other, right? I mean, you guys know my take on reality. I mean, if you really study the Bible, what's real isn't even real. I mean, you can't. What we see isn't real. So, my take on it doesn't matter either way because it's not even here anyway. It's literally an illusion. But, what's the answer to things like, we have plenty of photographs from the International Space Station. I hear that a lot. And I'm not even a guy that argues either way for this thing, right? But you hear that, they got photographs from the International Space Station. There's people there right now.
Yeah, how do you explain that?
So it just makes you, you're an evolution denier. So,
well,
they've got pictures, Dave.
Well, that's right. I mean,
first of all,
obviously.
All those pictures of Earth that supposedly come from the ISS, all of them are composites. Sure. NASA, this is out of NASA's own. They themselves admit, we haven't just done a fishbowl pullback. So we've actually pieced the picture together because now with software, you can actually go in and see how images are layered. And Rob Skiba did this great analysis on one of the photographs from the moon. And in the distance is the Earth. It's a little ball off in the distance. And by the way, the Earth should appear 4, 5, 6 times larger in the moon's sky than the moon appears in the Earth's sky.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, makes sense.
Just because,
But it's essentially it's the same scaled small little ball, and Rob Skiba walks you through SKIBA.
I think I've seen this. Maybe I've seen this.
You can delayer a video. This is how they discovered that Obama's birth certificate was false, because as they remove layers, all of a sudden you can see, oh my God, this started off with a blank form, and these layers were added at different stages. It was not written up. This isn't a photograph of a document. This is an image that has been played with that has several layers on it. You can pull those layers off. And Rob Skiba pulls one of the video layers out, and all you see where the Earth used to be is a black square.
Yeah, I've
and
seen
it's
that.
obvious that someone added the image of Earth to that photograph after the fact. It was not in the original photograph. So, again, by itself, I could understand that. But then you lop that in with all the other circumstantial evidence, and it becomes... I mean, we've got guys in prison on circumstantial... In fact,
Right, yeah.
if you saw that video I sent today, Howard's guy that he introduced us to, the Jim Wallace.
Yeah, J. Warner Wallace.
Love everything about him, except he doesn't believe conspiracies are possible because he doesn't think people could keep their mouth shut. I don't think he's gotten in touch yet with the spiritual aspect. He figured out Jesus is real through his police detective investigation skills. But I don't think he's figured out yet that Satan is also real, and he also has a spiritual component or power over people to deceive as well.
Well, here you go. If you just to respond to that, someone just brought up the story of Jimmy Hoffa.
Uh-huh.
Right, that's a conspiracy.
Mm-hmm.
They still don't know where he's at. So somebody had to do it. So somebody, if you want to say you can't keep your mouth shut, obviously they've done a pretty good job.
Yeah, because they haven't found him, and they were digging up backyards just as recent as, 5 years ago
Couple
or
years
10 years
ago,
ago or whatever it was. They were digging up
Yeah,
yards
farm.
out, It was a subdivision.
Wixom.
No, that was like on the east side somewhere.
Oh, no, they turned over a farm a few years ago.
They've been looking
was
for him
Milford.
forever.
Milford, yeah.
Yeah, and they were in Warren. They're
Warren, that's where it was. Yeah, they dug up some guy's driveway, and then come to find out it was like...
The most common
I
one
think he
was-
wanted a new driveway.
My dad used
so.
to think he was buried in the Renaissance Center. So, I mean, but that
Yeah,
was...
the most common one was the New Jersey Meadowlands.
I heard a bridge. One of the
I heard
bridge
that a lot.
Foundation of a building somewhere. Who knows? It probably was thrown on a wood chipper. I think, if anything...
But he's
probably fed to a bunch of pigs on some farm. He's gone, dude.
But you know how these conspiracy theories work, is that you throw out all these different things, pretty soon people just get tired of all the different stories, and it's like the Kennedy story. It's like,
Well, if you were to come out and say Jimmy Hoffa was never killed, I think people would probably say, "Well, you're crazy. Of course he was killed." But they don't have a body, so.
Well, and this is where Jim Garrison, who prosecuted Clay Shaw in the JFK trial. He was the only trial that has ever happened for the JFK murder. And the forces we're up against, they have no rules. They have no humanity. They will, in order to win, they will do anything. Any lie is game. Killing anyone is game. And it was interesting, but I was... because we're the same body that is behind the Sandy Hooks, the JFKs, the 9/11s, the moon. It all filters back to the same group. Much of it powered through Freemasons, through secret societies. And Jim Garrison, he did an interview in Playboy, and I think this would have been like 1967, October issue of 1967. Unbelievable interview. You guys should read this thing. I pulled several quotes from it. One of them was interesting. Let's see here. I'm looking for it right now, but basically there was... Oh, here it is. A London insurance firm, I believe it was Lloyd's of London, a London insurance firm has prepared an actuarial chart on the likelihood of 20 of the people involved in this case dying within 3 years of the assassination and found the odds 30 trillion to 1. Now, that was in 67 when he said that. The Clay Shaw trial had not yet even started. But as it stood on trial day, there were about 50 witnesses that were all wiped out, all to cover up the murder of the president. And we've got the president's mistresses being killed. We've got almost all of those people that were in the Grassy Knoll area. The number of those witnesses that died in the next 3 years is unbelievable. Dave Ferry, and I think Oliver Stone gives us a big clue, because remember the scene in JFK where Dave Ferry's smoking, like chain smoking cigarettes, and he's finally talking. And he's like, "Oh, you guys work for the CIA. You never leave the CIA, you know." There is more of this than anyone can dream. Those were his words. Yeah. And I think that was true, and it's more true today. It is so much. It is the forest we can't see anymore because we are looking at the tree. And what's the tree? Yeah. The tree is dancing with the stars. It's football season. It's all the things that distract us from looking at the truth, because it becomes white noise. I mean, what a great...
Speaking of, seeing something different than it actually is, okay, if someone tells you something, you stare at those pictures for a while and it looks like it's just random something, and all of a sudden there's something inside the picture. You've seen them things. You know what I'm talking about. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
So our minds, we expect to see something, and so very often that's just what exactly we'll see. Well, I was just playing around. Let me show you this picture, okay? This is an actual picture. I was listening to something Dave had to say. This is an actual picture from the International Space Station of the Earth, okay? And according to Hooper, the NASA says that they have to put these pictures together because they don't want to back the space station out and get a perspective picture, so they just composite them together. But if you look at this picture, okay, so this is an actual picture. I'm going to believe it's an actual picture. It could be crap as well, but it's an actual picture. Look at it. Does that not look like a flat Earth that's just going out farther and with a dome over it? Can you not see that in there?
Well, you could see that if you interpret it that way, or at first glance, it's round. So next slide.
Right, but I mean that easily could be a flat Earth going out there. Yeah. And again, I'm not flat Earth theorying. I'm just saying you got to look at things differently. If there's a good reason why they want you to believe something that's unbelievable, it's probably really unbelievable.
Right. And really, so speaking of odds, right? Like 30 trillion to 1 is the odds they gave all these people dying.
Well, that was when only 20 witnesses were dead. I mean, we ended up getting in. I mean, it's now hundreds.
Well, 30 trillion to 1 is still better odds.
This now would have been in the quadrillions.
Still, that's even still better odds than evolution is real.
Oh yeah.
Well, and
just thought I'd throw that out
evolution. After
I will make a stand on that one. Evolution is complete crap.
There's no doubt I can destroy it in 20 minutes.
The new story is that we're going on our 6th extinction.
Yeah.
Oh,
it's
funny.
Where did you get that number?
From
the Korean
news story.
From the Korean.
From the news. It's a big news story that's going out.
Dude, they just can't stop making crap up. Dude.
There was something in the Matrix when the architect was talking to Neo, and Neo he goes, and this would be the 6th time that we have done. And there was something that struck me about that where I just remember thinking, there's truth to this in some way. Like, this is... Humanity has gone through this rigmarole over and over and over.
Oh, they were the brothers on that film, weren't they?
They were. Well, now they're sisters.
Yeah.
They're still brothers.
The Wachowski sisters?
Yeah, they're still brothers.
So I'm so confused.
Yeah, I didn't know how to enter it because
it doesn't matter. They're still brothers.
I'm so I'm so gender confused
You
right
know,
now.
I'm zero confused about gender. It's
talking
simple.
about NASA again, one thing I want to throw out there, which never really entered my mind, but NASA's not a federal
No,
company.
again, thank you. You'll find the same MO.
So they're not like the Federal Reserve?
It's just it's like the Federal Reserve.
Exactly. Yeah.
They pretend to be
A
national aeronautical blah blah blah, but they're not. They're a private agency that gets granted tax dollars.
Mhm.
And who's in NASA? It really was a bunch of Nazi rocket scientists.
Yeah, they
this was
started
the
it.
core of NASA. And you've got the head rocket guy himself, Werner von Braun, saying it was all bullshit. It was a lie. It's my deathbed confession. And he made it to Carol Rosen, very credible people. And he's like, you've got to get this story out to the world. They're going to use space as a great deception. It is all bullshit. Don't believe it.
Bullshit.
And you've got so many other
Awesome
defectors.
German
You've got
accent,
Matt
dude.
Boylan coming out of NASA saying, yeah, they wanted me to do graphics and make up planets and draw pictures of stuff to give to the public. And they were drunk one night at a party laughing about the fact that they're fooling the whole world. And he's like, what are you guys talking about? And one of them lets him in on it, like, actually, we live on a flat plane. And he's like, he didn't even believe him at first. But he starts looking around and he figures out, oh, my God, we really do. He leaves NASA. Look him up. Math,
I looked him up.
M-A-T-H,
Yeah.
Boylan. And then, of course, the astronauts. These are guys that are... I mean, if you really love your country and you just flew to the moon, and you are... who was the guy that gave the speech at the White House in 1994 on the 25th anniversary? Not Shepard, not Aldrin.
Glenn?
Was it? No, not John Armstrong. Neil
Stretch.
Armstrong. When you just look at his mannerisms after you just supposedly accomplished the greatest feat in the history of mankind, and what do? You show up for one news conference and your head is down. You're showing all the signs of someone that's guilt-ridden.
Mm-hmm.
And what do you do for the next 25 years? You grant 0 interviews. 0. His public appearance was 25 years later at the White House. And what does he say in that public appearance? His first words are, well, a parrot doesn't fly very well, but he repeats what he's told. What a cryptic thing to start off.
Sure.
And then he goes on to say, you young kids, and he's tearing up, saying, in order to peel the layers of truth, the truth protected by layers, what do you mean? Why does the truth need to be protected? Why wouldn't, I didn't like the method, but the guy that went around to all the astronauts saying, hey, swear on a Bible that you went to the moon. Now think about this.
He's guy got punched by Aldrich or something, wasn't it?
Okay, now.
Aldrich is cantankerous, man.
That's being in the Antarctic. You know?
If someone came up to you, Tony, or any of you guys, and said, you don't work at, your company. You don't work at printing. You don't work. They just said that. They're like, you're not an employee there. What would be your reaction?
I wish I wasn't.
I'd be like, well, I am, and I really don't care what you have to say.
Right.
Yeah, what do
yeah.
you care?
Swear on a Bible. If we'll get you out of my face, fine. I'll swear on a Bible.
That I work there?
Yeah, if some dude came up to you and said, I don't
Fine.
believe you actually work at Kiefel.
Right.
I don't believe you work there.
And I said, yeah, of course I do.
Well, I do work there. Would you swear on a Bible?
Well, yeah, of course.
Define work.
But I mean, yeah, of course.
My point is when you bring up something that someone's trying to cover up, anger is, and any police detective will tell you this. The Jim Wallace guy, I actually heard it today. He'll tell you the same thing. They will respond in anger. What do you mean you don't believe me? You don't believe, if you go up to John Elway and say, you didn't win a Super Bowl, he'd be like, go read the news, dumbass. Get out of my face.
Right.
He would slough him off. Do you think John Elway would get into a fight with some fan who's claiming you didn't really win the Super Bowl? Do you think he'd want to get in a fist fight with him?
Probably not.
Do you think he'd run away from the Bible? Do you think he'd like leave a conference in the middle of the speech and just walk out the door because he couldn't handle it?
No, not
Again,
likely.
by themselves, these little events, they can be explained away. But taken as a whole, I mean, you're looking at a cover-up of a crime, if you ask me. Now, at the time, because I still think people are good by and large, and I can see how they would have been convinced to do it for, Americanism, for patriotic duty.
Yeah, but how do you keep them all quiet all this time?
Whoa,
That's a good point.
Here's how you do it.
You need to threaten their families.
You do something like what you did to Gus Grissom. You guys know what happened to him?
Yeah, right. He died in the...
What was Gus Grissom saying right before he died? He said, there's no way this thing can make it to the moon. There's no way. We don't have the technology. This is BS. And what did they do? They
died on the launch pad.
Right, because of a fire that broke out in his lunar, in the module. And then his family spends the next 30 years still to this day saying he was murdered by NASA, which makes them sound crazy. But you don't think they did some research into it? Like, where did the fuel come from for this fire? Because this was an electrical fire and there's no oxygen in here. How did this thing suddenly... They knew that his death was, if you ask me, it's just it's a warning signal. You talk, you break your silence, this is what can happen to you. Certainly. Jim Garrison ran across more people afraid to talk about JFK for that very reason. Because they'd seen this evil force at work that you want to be able to keep a secret, dude? You scare people literally with death. That's one way to keep... It now takes a very brave and courageous person to break through that and come out and tell the truth.
Even if you do, you've got all these news sources and all these other things that are fighting against you. That
you'll end up being insane, commit suicide, stuff like this.
Yeah.
Right?
What do you think happened to James Forrestal?
Yeah, I mean that's
Or what was it? Secretary of the Navy. He was a part of MJ-12 at first.
Okay.
Is that it?
That's it. We're out.
How about that?
All right, I guess we're there.
Okay.
At the
That's
end of
much
the day,
more subtle
folks,
than Kenny yelling at us.
Yes, there are problems in the world. What's the main point of this show?
Well, Jesus
Someone
Christ,
else say it.
obviously.
Bring him to God.
Focus on Jesus Christ.
That's the answer to all of this stuff. All right, we'll catch you guys next week.
Yeah, it's been Down the Rabbit Hole. We'll see you next week.